evening topic, Mixer family. I hope you're having a wonderful evening. I just thought I would drop a few lines and talk about Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth, our new federal holiday. As of June 17th, Biden signed into law that Juneteenth will be our official holiday. It's June 19th. Will be an official holiday. Now, as you may know, Juneteenth is a celebrated holiday among black people as the last slaves were freed in Texas in 1865. Officially on June 19th, 1865, General Granger of the Union Army issued General Order Number 3 in Galveston, Texas, freeing the enslaved people in Texas. Now, President Lincoln in 1863 declared the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in Confederate-held states. So, so there are some things that we need to explain about that. So that means that there were a few slave states that still remained. I believe Missouri, Kentucky, and Delaware were slave-holding Union states. So those states were allowed to keep their slaves even after the Civil War. And I have to explain that a little bit. So even though we celebrate Juneteenth as the official end of slavery in the South, it was not the official end of slavery in the United States. There were at the time 36 states, and it takes a three-fourths majority of states to ratify a constitutional amendment, which would be the only thing that would save slavery from ever being a problem in the United States again anyway, because just because a proclamation was declared by the President of the United States does not necessarily make that permanent and binding. So, to make that clearer, on the 27th state to ratify the 13th Amendment was Georgia. By doing so, that gave enough majority where it became a constitutional law. So the 13th Amendment became a constitutional law on December 6th, 1865. I know y'all hear about December 6th or June 6th or different days. Probably December 7th lives in infamy, 1941. Well, this is December 6th. It's not living in infamy. It is the beginning of a change in the United States when we actually outlawed slavery and made it a constitutional law that slavery was no longer legal. Now, let me give some further clarification for that. Now, if you commit a crime, you could lose your right to freedom, and it could be forced into servitude. And the crimes are not defined in the Constitution, which leads to other legal issues that we'll also talk about here. So, like I said, officially in Texas, the slaves were free. This holiday has been celebrated since 1866 by people in Texas, and it's spread across the nation to other areas and to all the black people who've been celebrating this for years. And we know how fun and interactive Juneteenth can be, and it is an awesome holiday for us, a chance for us to celebrate our culture, our music, our food, and each other. So this is something that we've done for years. From that, I can say this much: it has sparked a lot of other celebrations, of course. And we talked about July 4th celebration, which is the celebration of the nation declaring its independence in 1776. This ties into that in this sense. We as a nation finally started living up to the ideals that were originally written into the Declaration of Independence. I know I made another video where I said we lived a lie for years under the Declaration of Independence. Well, Juneteenth was the beginning of the truth of realization of those ideals for everybody, not just for white men, also for black men. Later on, women's suffrage came along, so women became free. They could vote, and all those other things. It's all in part of that freedom and the beginning of understanding what liberty and justice is in the United States for all. The key word is for all. So on Juneteenth, That's why we celebrate it. It's kind of like the 4th of July for black people. That's all I can say. It's like the 4th of July for black people. There are people who have problems with it, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Um, However, like I said, 1865 was a unique situation, and like I said, it was complicated. So by December, Delaware and Kentucky freed their slaves as well. So some people say, hey, we should just celebrate December 6th. Okay, well, we'll just leave June 19th as the celebration date, but the truth needs to be told because the truth is not being told by the media right now. They're more concerned about 14 representatives who voted against the Juneteenth holiday. And with the way our country is, that should be expected. The first thing that they said was this divides our country the way that it's called, because it's called Independence for All Day. Juneteenth, Independence for All Day. I think that bothers some people, but for me, it doesn't bother me. It ties into July 4th, and some people say, well, now we're going to have two separate celebrations in the United States. Well, black people have been celebrating Juneteenth for years, and a lot of them don't celebrate July 4th because of that fact right there. This tie-in, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get, if you're trying to get unity, here's unity right here. So 1776, Declaration of Independence. America creates, it says, freedom and liberty and justice for all. But they still held men in slavery. In fact, I believe only 16 people who signed the Declaration of Independence, 52 of whom were all slave owners. 15, I think it's 16 out of 52, yeah, that signed the Declaration of Independence were slave owners. I mean, 16 of them were the only ones that did not own slaves. So think about that. Think about that. They were slave owners. And slavery consisted from 1776 to 1865. In at the end of the Civil War, part of the main reason why the Civil War was fought was over slavery. I'm saying Democrats, Republicans. That's not important here. The Confederacy, in fact, declared the reason why they were separating from the Union was because they felt that the federal government was taking away their right to enslave human beings, and that was definitely something that caused conflict. Because if you believe in the ideas of 1776, then you know that was wrong. So here we are now, and all those issues have gone away in 1865. Now, there are some other caveats to the story that we have to talk about. There was, of course, the Reconstruction period that lasts until 1877, when James Garfield made a deal with the devil, so to speak, in order to win the White House. And when he made that deal, or should I say Grover Cleveland, sorry. He made that deal to win the White House. They removed the federal troops from the South. And black people, well, they didn't really have any teeth without the Union troops in the South. So people who were representatives and all this stuff found themselves at the short end of the stick, and many black representatives died while others were chased clearly out of the South. It was a sad time. And then we were plunged into, of course, where we are now with this separate but equal thing, where black people lived for decades under segregation, lost their rights to vote, lost their rights to have a voice in court. It was decades and decades of that. Most of that was not solved until the 60s. Late 60s and even into the 70s, we were still having some issues in the United States. Of course, you know, we had the Voting Rights Act. We had the courts that declared school segregation illegal and unconstitutional. So these things are the things that changed our country. But like I said, Juneteenth was a spark that lit the flame. Even though there was already emancipation efforts in the United States, there were abolitionists who were fighting for this to happen, and they got it to happen. It happened. People lost their lives. 600,000 Americans lost their lives in that war. Some of them were Confederates, not exactly American citizens at the time, but they still lost their lives in this war, in this fight for freedom and justice, and the lost cause, the other side with their cause, if you really want to call that a cause, to limit the freedoms of a group of individuals in the United States that does not live up to the beliefs of 1776. Um, so we get down to the nitty gritty, and like I said, it took years. It took years to actually live up to the dreams of that. So we get to now, the modern time. Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter movement, they're marching in the streets now because of what happened to George Floyd, which means we still got a long way to go with certain issues. Um, Here's my feeling about why Biden and this became a bipartisan effort to create this holiday. It was a symbolic gesture that we're not racist. It's kind of like, Nancy Pelosi and company wearing a cloth and taking a knee. It's all symbolic. But what it does not do is solve any real problems other than, oh, that's nice. You decide, to recognize our holiday. What would fix the problems, really? Maybe if we pass the George Floyd police reform bill. It has this wonderful thing called qualified immunity in there that we're trying to end for police. So they can be sued in court if they commit brutality against other people or kill people. Also, it has ideas about training police so to make their job better and using funds in ways that other than just for giving them more military equipment and things like that. I think training is very important. You're talking about a person that takes 6 months in an academy, then is put out on the street, I guess, for another 6 months with an individual, and then expected to know the law. A person who goes to law school has to go to law school for 4 years to know the law. The FBI doesn't allow a person on the street for 3 years. I know sheriff's departments that don't allow an officer on the street for 3 years until they've had time to for training and understanding the law and how they are supposed to do as police officers. So it's important that we increase the training of these police officers, and so that we can have better policing on the streets. Also, you've heard of defund the police. There are certain issues and things that could be fixed in the city. Housing is an issue. Schools are an issue. Mental health is an issue. All these things in the cities are an issue. And then you have to fix those so that you don't have people running around being criminal because they're homeless, don't have a place to eat, or there are a lack of education. And those are people who usually end up in jail. Those are the people who usually end up committing crime. So this is the things that you have to consider when we're talking about the issues surrounding a day like Juneteenth. Like I said, it was great to see Black Lives Matter march in the street. This is a tradition, long overdue. Martin Luther King marched in the street, but Juneteenth was always in the back of your mind. You remember that the freedom that we obtained on that day. So, going with that, how do I feel about 14 representatives of Congress saying that by ratifying this holiday, we are dividing the country? Let's talk about all the issues that are dividing the country. The negativity that comes out about Black Lives Matter. The negativity that comes out about NAACP, the negativity that comes out about people wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. We say all lives matter. Well, yes, all lives do matter, especially when Black lives matter in this country. Sometimes we fall short on that. But there's another side of this Juneteenth ratification that I'd like to talk about. Substance. While it's a wonderful gesture, and it's another symbolic gesture, no different than having a first black vice president or a first black female attorney general or anything like that, it is all symbolic. It's great and wonderful if they can do things for policy, but usually as an individual they can't. We see some of the stumbles that Harris has fallen over as vice president of the United States. My biggest issue is this. Like I said, we need to get HR 1 passed. We need to get HR 4 passed. We need to get the George Floyd bill passed. Those things are great. It's kind of like, okay, we got a great symbol with Juneteenth, and we're all going to celebrate that holiday. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we could get those things passed? $15 minimum wage, that puts people to work and gets people off the welfare rolls. Pass $15 minimum wage, you know. Help with student loan debts, because there are a lot of people, I did not know that people, if they don't pay those student loans, sometimes they can lose things, like nurses can lose their nursing license and other things like that. That's not good, because then they can't pay the bill anyway. So let's try to forgive some of that debt, help people out. I hear that 90% of white people, by the time they're my age, are almost done with paying their student loans, while 90% of black people of the same age have not even paid 20% of their loan. That's not good. That's really not good. So why don't we work on loans forgiveness? Let's not give all these technicalities why we can't do this and why we can't do that. I mean, you could pass Juneteenth because it has no teeth. Like, what is Juneteenth gonna do to change the world other than say, hey, we celebrate a black holiday? What's it do? We got Black History Month. Does it change anything other than Black History Month? And I'm sure people say, oh, that's divisive. They've been saying that's divisive since you created Black History Month. It's been divisive. It's a divisive month. And that's why we have this fight against critical race theory. That's why we have these 14 senators who decided that this is a bad idea to have June 9th. Sorry, white people. Sometimes you can't make those decisions about what's divisive among us. We can sit down and talk. But wouldn't it be nice to just celebrate the holiday with us? We could celebrate it together. You want us to celebrate July 4th because you said that is an Independence Day. Well, some of our ancestors were still locked up in slavery because, like I said, only 16 of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence were free. Were not slave owners. The other members on there were enslaving people. And on top of that, just the thought, none of them were black that signed the Declaration of Independence. But Juneteenth, black people were freed from slavery, and they started getting to live up to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence of 1776. The United States was living up to that declaration, or beginning to live up to that declaration, and that gives people a reason to celebrate July 4th. Maybe that's a thought we should think of, but sometimes I wonder about us because, we get into this, oh, that's divisive. Oh, that's divisive. Well, why is it divisive? Because you don't like it. That's the only reason it's divisive. You don't like it. That's not enough these days. There's things I don't like, but I have to live with it. That's how it works. I'm serious. That's how it works. I mean, my state's run by Republicans. I'd rather not be ran by Republicans. But hey, those are the people who represent us, and we have no choice. They say they do things for the people. Then I wonder about some of the crazy bills, like trying to build more prisons with COVID money. Hey, I'm just saying that's the world we live in. So anyway, I'm ranting and raving, but you get the gist of what I'm talking about. I hope you enjoy Juneteenth and celebrate your day wherever you are, because there's some places that celebrate. Here in Alabama, ain't not one black person in town. Hey, they enjoy the holiday. So just enjoy the day. Enjoy the food. Enjoy the culture. Enjoy the day. And then whatever you do, try to learn a little history too. It's important that you do that on this day. Oh, by the way, don't forget, hit the notification button down below. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed. And I'd love to hear from you. So please make a comment below. And y'all have a wonderful day.